Okay, so guys, I think we'll just start in. Welcome everybody, and welcome in particular to Isaiah. I do have to try hard to get his name right because, as he just said, he tried very hard to get mine right. So we owe him that favor at least. Today is one of our Speakers Corner sessions. It's the news from around the world. We've looked before at Sweden and we've looked before at some other places, and we're going to continue that habit today by looking at South Africa. But rather than a generic story, I've asked Isaiah to have a look at that from his own unique angle. And the theme or the idea that we're going to start with is this phrase, which actually has a meaning for us in Ireland and a lot of places in the global north as a open source software brand name. But I think we're going to have a pretty different understanding of that by about 1:30 today. So the person I've asked to have a look at that and to explain the idea and then the connections with innovation and innovation in South Africa is my good friend Isaiah. So I need to big him up because he's too honest and modest. He won't do it himself. Isaiah and myself met first 4 years ago doing an Innovation 360 accreditation. We've run international events online, and we're developing a training course together as well. And we'll see how that goes next year if we can find any time to get the work done that we've promised to do. Apart from that, Isaiah is a good friend. He's got a huge heart, huge energy as well, and creativity. The amount of stuff and the different kinds of projects that Isaiah has done, it kind of makes me tired just looking at it sometimes. So Isaiah definitely gets things done. From Eskom, the South African electric utility, to the municipality of Tshwane and their innovation program, which he currently runs. So, and in the middle of all that, I think he's working on a PhD as well in innovation management. I don't know how you do that, Isaiah, and I don't know how you do all that and then find time to talk to us. So thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Owen. Yeah, I don't know that guy that you described, but thank you all for the invitation. And let me just get the slides going. And I must say, it's really good to be amongst fellow innovators. It's quite often a lonely space. I'm sure you also experience it. There's limited understanding for what we do, generally speaking. Owen, the slide there clear?
It's perfectly clear to me. Everybody else?
Cool. I will just quickly run and perhaps share some examples and ideas with you this afternoon. And really, it's about Ubuntu and the fact that Ubuntu sits at the heart of innovation in South Africa. Generally speaking, so certainly in the areas where I practice innovation now, this is a sensitive topic. Initially, I thought we should avoid the rugby topic, Owen, between us and Ireland and others. And this morning I chose heritage and my colleague chose Rugby Fridays. And then I became a bit jealous. But yeah, I guess a topic for a few weeks from now, Owen. But that's us, that's me. And as you said, yeah, within the city of Tshwane. So looking at Ubuntu, and it really comes from the language isiZulu, and it's phrased Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu, meaning a person. Let me just apologies for that. A person is a person because of or through other people, and then what I see around me, I mean, growing up as well, that's the kind of experience that one would get. And Bishop Desmond Tutu phrased it well when he said that we need people because we learn all our things to become human from others. And I see this being practiced at all levels throughout South Africa, generally speaking, like I'm saying, I'm generalizing, but certainly Ubuntu, or humanity loosely translated, is a very important phrase for us. You know, over the years, when you engage people in South Africa, platforms, business training, entrepreneurship, often when you ask people, what is it that you want to do business-wise, or even when it comes to innovation, the first answer would be, I want to help people. And I struggled with it for many years because it's like people make a choice for making money versus helping people. I've since learned that, I mean, one should be doing both. It's not mutually exclusive, and you need money to help. But the sense generally is people want to help and then almost be servants or slave. And with that, I mean where they would typically deploy ourselves and avail ourselves to help others. And the link with regard to this to innovation for me over the years has been very interesting when you apply the Ubuntu philosophy at the center of different groupings, because it then creates inclusivity and more innovation-driven organizations and groupings. And the application for that, for me, certainly over many years, specifically, one example is in the form of open innovation, the notion of co-creation. I mean, all of us deal with this. And to say, how do we balance the seeker-solver scenario and get ideas from people to solve problems? Interestingly, in the city of Tshwane, it's not unusual to have at least 2 or 3 protests just outside my office because it's a municipality and service delivery is often a challenge. But with the Ubuntu mindset, when you approach some of these protesters, quite often they have answers, they have solutions, they have ideas, but they don't feel empowered to co-create the solutions that they themselves need. So this is how we tend to try and apply open innovation in the city of Tshwane and otherwise. And also helps people to feel like they're adding value. Now, one example I want to briefly share with you is a movement that I founded last year, but it has been in the making for over 10 years, and it's called the Innovation Army. It's not officially launched yet, but it's already a bit known because we piloted last year. And really at the heart of this Innovation Army, I guess it's my and the team's contribution to say we want to help people. And if you look at our why statement, why the Innovation Army movement exists, it's because it really believes in the creative force of people. And then the notion there is to use ideas in this war, this invisible war, dealing with challenges that we see. But that we come across so many people that don't even know they are creative or they have ideas. So we really ignite them and then help them to unleash these ideas to become more productive instead of just asking, perhaps start businesses. And I'll share 1 or 2 examples with you quickly. And the audacious mission of the Innovation Army is to have 1 million ideas by the end of 2025. And we refer to it as brain children because I introduced this methodology of a brainchild because people have aha moments, but most that I certainly interact with never give birth to the idea, so that there's a brainchild with a name that you have to nurture and grow the idea. So we've mapped that methodology and compared loosely, I mean, with the journey of a child up till the adult. And it's quite similar when you look at ideas and businesses. And that's what we're trying to push with the Innovation Army. The pilot I referred to last year, and it's quite interesting how it started. Someone I look after, a pastor, sometime last year in May, where I shared this Innovation Army thoughts that I have and how I want to help people, etc. And they listened to me, and he just kept quiet. And literally 2 weeks later, after that, I got a call from him to say, there's the date, 22nd of June. That's when you'll have the first workshop about the Innovation Army around innovation and creativity, because you always speak about it, and now it needs to happen. And they forced me into starting this Innovation Army movement, which I certainly welcome, because otherwise I would have probably still thought about it. But nonetheless, so at the first workshop, it was a cold day. There were over 70 people, age ranging from 14 to 76 years of age, which was interesting, unexpected. And there was just this thirst and hunger for people understanding what is creativity and innovation. And of the 70, probably 60, 70% of those people are unemployed. And so we started the workshop, had many workshops. We launched a competition called a Brainchild competition. 24 ideas were received, 9 finalists. And so far, 3 businesses have been established. If you look at the picture at the right, on the right, those were the 9 finalist teams. And the man marked number 1, that's Pastor Range. He's the 76-year-old. When he attended the second workshop, he said he's coming out of retirement because he had many ideas that he never developed and concluded on. And he's now looking at commercializing one of his ideas. Whether it'll be successful, I don't know, but we're helping him. I won't go through all of them, but the lady next to him, number 2, she started an initiative called Dads on Duty. Because of a background, many kids are fatherless. We've got high statistics around it, and it's really a problem for us. And linking dads to assist kids that are fatherless, and it's really solving a problem. And the last person I'll refer to, which is mark number 3, in her late 60s. And when she attended the workshops, she said she had this idea for over 40 years, but never did anything with it. But post the workshops now, she needed to get it on paper. And she couldn't, so she wrote in all her grandkids, and they wrote something, and she submitted and entered the competition. Interestingly, when she presented the idea at the awards evening, people came that said, we want to work with you, partner with you, even fund you. And that's the important for me of giving birth to your brainchild, because it's visible and people can then assist you. And this is the type of movement that we really want to push and have impact. Just quickly, a lot of spin-offs that was unforeseen. To the left, that's Eileen and Michael. They run a training company. Attended some of the workshops and says, but we also have a training company. We'll train a few people, unemployed people, for free. Work readiness programs, IT, etc. A few graduated in the last couple of weeks. Some got jobs, some started businesses. And it's just interesting what such a movement and the experience in humanity. Now, I've done a lot of things, but this is really fulfilling when you actually have an impact and make a difference in people's lives. The second example, just very briefly, we do a lot of this in the city of Tshwane, was really around what we call the Inter-University Innovation Challenge. In the city, we have 3 very large universities. And we went to them and said, look, we have many problems, service delivery challenges. But we'd like to co-create with you. We specify the challenges. We started these ecosystem of partnerships in the city of Tshwane and say, let's co-create solutions. Now, if you look at the top of my slide, that's the 3 universities. At the bottom, we have enablers from the Innovation Hub to the French Embassy and many others that really partnered with us. And we then launched a challenge in November 2019. And students responded. Now, I must say, when we launched, we were very concerned because it was at early days of COVID. But nonetheless, connecting seekers and solvers, we had over 164 innovative ideas. And I must say, these were not simply ideas. It's well-developed proposals that were submitted from these student bodies. And we were quite happy with the response from the university students. And it was really tackling real problems that we have in the city. A lot of results, but for me, by far, most interesting, the top 12 were identified and they registered businesses. Some of them are still in incubation. Some of them we now brought into the city to say, we're opening our doors, giving you a platform to pilot your idea, because we really have to adopt these solutions. We have shrinking budgets, limited funding to do more. So we need these innovations actually to still maintain our service delivery levels. Now, leverage and value was quite significant. One of the very interesting outcomes or spin-offs was, as part of the process, the French Embassy assisted us and we connected with the Blue Ocean Awards company leaders in France. And they trained our students on Blue Ocean methodology. And very, very interesting. And that led to us hosting the first international chapter of the Blue Ocean Awards. I think it was in 2020 at the French ambassador's residence in South Africa. So quite exciting spin-offs. And the picture on the corner, I'll quickly just say, what students then come up with is fascinating. As we speak, the city is being owed 21 billion by our customers, or 21 billion rand, which I would think, Owen, is probably about £500 million. But people don't have capacity to pay. So these students developed a solution to say, the city of Tshwane, why don't you barter with your customers? For example, you may have someone that's unemployed, but they have a skill. For instance, they can cut grass. You need money to offer services. Why don't you get the person to maintain a section of a park and then deduct from what he owes the city? And it's a win-win because the person becomes productive, reducing debt, etc. So these type of solutions really are some of what we see students bring to the table. And to the left, having been with the Blue Ocean Awards, significant chances of improving, chances of getting funding, and we already see that happening. Now, as I draw to a conclusion on this example, it's the role of leadership was recognized here, but it helped fuel the program and programs after this one, because this was in 2022 where we were recognized for this method, this InterVarsity Innovation Challenge, because the methodology itself was innovative. And what you see there was our deputy mayor with the mayor of Ekurhuleni, where we were hosted, and one of our ministers. And then there's a lot of solidified the importance of innovation and that we need to co-create and have new solutions to still maintain service delivery levels. And this was welcoming for our innovation community. But the more important image for me is this one, where some, and this is not everyone, but the community representatives from the universities, Innovation Hub, all of them that contribute to say, let's help you build this system, this platform where your citizens, and we have over 3.2 million citizens in the city of Tshwane, can co-create solutions for the city because it affects them and we all need them. And this community has since then grown, and I think the growth in terms of initiatives from them is now accelerating at a pace, which is good, but it's tough to keep up. But because we see the value, this is the enabling community. Now, and that process of the innovation challenge still continued into this year, where some of our students ended up in Paris earlier this year presenting their solution to the platform there at the Blue Ocean Awards, the second chapter for us. And it really just shows when you care and you join forces, the type of impact that one can have. I have some examples. I'm just going to take half a minute on each. This was an e-bikes pilot where we tested the concept of bike sharing in Hatfield. Now, interesting with this, the pilot was a success. But what's interesting with the spin-offs is a few weeks after we ended the pilot, I was in the US Embassy adjudicating various pitches. And there was a guy that pitched a business to start a food delivery service using bicycles, e-bikes, and normal mechanical bicycles. And afterwards, I engaged him, and he said this idea came, and he piloted his business when we ran this pilot, and he could see that it worked. And we didn't even know that someone used the bicycles in our pilot to start a business. This one also from a community point of view, solution to use a cell phone, an app to rapidly test hearing. We piloted this idea in just under 3 months. We tested over 13,000 school children, whether they had hearing loss or whether they're still on par, with a lot of volunteers. The interesting with this and the impact on community is the following. Out of the 13,000 tested, just over 4,000 people had a level of hearing loss, and just under 50% of the 4,000 had hearing loss because of a buildup of wax in their ears. And I mean, that's a problem that's easily solvable, but the children were struggling at school, so we could deal with the wax issue and kids could hear better and perform better. But these community-based Ubuntu-related initiatives really carry a lot of weight. I'll end with this one, Owen, before I share my thoughts on innovation in Ubuntu. This is Paseka. A few years ago, he approached us. He's from Garankwa, a non-technical person. In fact, he studied marketing. And he said he heard from he stayed with his grandmother, the toilet leaking consistently, and it started to bother him. And at some point, he measured in a day how many liters they actually gets lost in the system, and started in research for the community South Africa-wide. Needless to say, it's a huge problem with water scarcity, etc. He then got some engineers in the room and he developed, let me call it a gadget, that will prevent water losses in toilets. Fast forward a few years, because once he developed it, he came to the city. We opened our doors, gave him access to 800 households where he could test and pilot the solution. Fast forward, Paseka now has 3 global patents for his gadget. He's got a manufacturing plant. He employs many people. In fact, in the city, we're assisting him now to get a bigger facility and giving him space, land, and employing people. And these are real examples of just some examples of people adding real value. Now, as I end, I know I may be going a bit fast, but I'm watching the time. So as I conclude on this, I had to reflect, and I always do these kind of reflections when we think of Ubuntu and innovation leadership and equation now. The engineers in the room will say, why a plus, and should it not be multiplication? And yeah, I guess it can be a debate. But nonetheless, if you look at this equation to get results in co-creation, on the left, leaders have to be clear about the innovation intent, that clarity of vision. Secondly, when you co-create with people, they have to be trained. There has to be a level of skill and competency for them to actually then execute what's expected of them. So people development is one important element for leaders. Third, innovation culture. And I'm saying the leaders have to create space for people or communities to innovate. When I speak about space, and it's something that I'm still working on, the S in space for me refers to slip-ups. There should be room for mistakes, area, and for failure even. The P stands for praise. People should be praised and recognized for their initiative. A for action, pilot projects, implement, move. C for collaboration, and E simply just for an environment of support. That's what leaders have to do. Second last, the clarity of how your solution or your idea will flow to the system, referring to the innovation process, because I've seen quite often people will not release their idea if they don't know what's the rules of engagement, how will it flow? Because in my view, when people give you the idea, it's like they're giving you a piece of themselves. So you have to be clear about it. And then lastly, something has to be done with the ideas once it's been through the process, whether it's testing, pilot, or implemented, so that value is created. So implementation is then crucial. So my final thoughts then, in terms of this equation, and then some of the frustrations that's opposing or opposite to Ubuntu, is the following. If leaders create the environment, but they're not clear about the innovation intent, people might have the capacity and all other things, but they're confused. They don't know what you want from me, what you want from innovation and the innovation efforts. Secondly, if all is there, but you haven't trained people or equipped them, anxiety then starts to sink in, because people are anxious. They want to, but they can't. They haven't been equipped. If the culture is not developed, often we face resistance, because then there's fear of failure and all kinds of resistance, because policies hasn't been developed for people to participate in your innovation initiative. Then second last, if there's no process, there's frustration. I know what leadership wants. I'm competent. There's a culture, but tell me about the rules of engagement. I have this idea, and I literally have seen all these things in different innovation communities and environments where people are frustrated. How do I share this idea? You have the problem. I want to help. Show me. So leaders have to develop these things, and in this case, innovation process. And then lastly, if we don't implement, then it's really just a cycle of false starts. We have all these exciting things, but we're not getting the value from innovation and then the impact from Ubuntu. But for me, we do innovation so that there's value. And then as I end, quite often for us, it's to literally build a plane whilst flying. But the point is we're doing it together. It's a risky business and sometimes painful, but the discipline or the work of innovation is for me largely in the space. But if there's humanity and we're doing it together, yes, we fail together and we succeed together. Thank you. Let me leave it there, Owen, so that I don't take up too much time.
Well done, Isaiah. Thanks very much. You've taken the slides down. That's fantastic. Priceless. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. Eric, thanks for the applause. I can see that on the screens, John, as well. I will open this up to the floor. As you know, I will definitely have a couple of questions of my own, but I should probably be last here. I might be unfair because there's only one lady who's in the room full time. If I can ask Martina for your reaction in the first place.
Sorry. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, thank you, Isaiah. That was very interesting, and especially the last slide. I love the way you displayed how the gaps can cause the different problems. I suppose two things that really stood out for me in this. I think it's wonderful what you're doing, but it's, I suppose, the inclusivity bit around people that might not, you might put forward as innovators. So, for example, the guy who developed 2 patents, so some might look at people like that and say they don't have the competence or the skill to develop this. But so I applauded that. And secondly was the 76-year-old. And I was curious as to why he never got to express his ideas in his lifetime. Why did it take till 76? If you had insight on that.
Yes. Can I give feedback now or share my thoughts now after each? Yeah, perfect. Look, the guy with the 2 patents, Paseka, very interesting listening to him. If you listen to his frustration, his sleepless nights, but he persevered. And and he motivates many currently because for him, it was an impossibility, but he managed to do it. His product is even now into mass market. The 76-year-old, I think it's a matter of belief. He said he had this idea, but I think people sometimes think innovation is not for me, it's for someone else. I'm not maybe creative enough or there's misunderstanding. So what we tend to do in these workshops, we clearly try and demystify innovation and creativity and what makes it difficult and easy. And I think once people have an understanding, like the Pasekas, that it was someone just like you and he's done it, it kind of activates them. And I think for him, it was probably that, for the 76-year-old.
It's brilliant. Yeah, it's great to see. Thank you, Isaiah.
Thanks, Martina. Eric, over to you.
Thanks, Owen, and thanks, Isaiah. Very interesting presentation. I love the idea of the Innovation Army movement, and I think that that's something that probably could be applicable around the world to tackle kind of societal issues by the communities that they're impacted instead of other people coming in and trying to solve it for them. So is it something you're thinking of taking bigger and wider than where you are today?
That's a very, very interesting question, Eric, and perhaps this is a platform at some point we can brainstorm together, because we've learned a lot of lessons during that first pilot. And because we didn't ask for it, but we got a lot of publicity, now we have people asking from different corners, can you come to our community? And we haven't quite developed the capacity. So what I'm currently for South Africa now trying to figure out is instead of having community-based competitions, perhaps I'm in the process of acquiring an open innovation platform to say there should be perhaps a national platform running these competitions and then have the training sessions in communities. But the plane is still being built as we fly. As we fly. Owen, you'll have to help me with the English, you know by now. As
That
we
works
fly this
perfectly.
plane. And yes, it would be interesting. I think outside our borders as well, there's been some inquiries. So, and for us, we're really starting this and we're very open to share our lessons and thinking and for people just to take it and implement, because this is an NPO and it's really about helping others. Yeah.
Very good, Eric. Do you consider yourself answered? That's the question, Eric.
Yes, and just because it touched a very a space that's very important to me. And when I was in Translators Without Borders, we would have partner a lot locally with organization in Africa to develop solutions in those communities. And I can see how it could easily be kind of applicable in other parts of the world. So yes, best of luck with that, and I will be following what you're doing with interest.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, on my screen it says that Alan got in just before John, so it's over to you, Alan.
No problem, John. Just hold it for a second. I'll speed through this. I just have one observation. I loved all of that, and I was particularly interested in that matrix or that equation slide at the end. I think we all kind of started looking at that, going, "Oh, okay, that's very, very, very insightful, and something we could all kind of take lessons from." It's very, very good. But I'm going to bring you right back to the start of when you started talking, and something that really kind of resonated with me, right? When you introduced yourself about the practice of being an innovator. It can be a little bit tough. It can be a bit lonesome. It can be a bit misunderstood, and there isn't, always that great support. And then you pivoted with your talk straight into this concept of Ubuntu, which was helping people in communities. Now, that's kind of how we all got to be here. Back to the foundation of Innovate Ireland was kind of innovators helping one another because we were all, to an extent frustrated, or we hit blockers, or we felt very challenged. We hit lots of those red squares on your last slide. In our roles as innovators, we were all finding that. There's a membership of 300-400 people in Ireland now, from students just starting out to senior academics. But we're all finding, we've all found at various stages that innovation is not a regular career path. And sometimes being really, really great innovator doesn't bring you professional or personal rewards in the situation you find yourself. But where it really connects with the rest of your talk was when you have a bad day at the office, or you're not getting the things you need from your boss, or professionally, or those kind of things run into problems. If you have a forum like this where there is a focus on helping people, where you can skill share, where you can mentor, where you can help other initiatives that aren't directly related to your job as an innovator, I think we've all found that really helpful. I think that can give you great energy and commitment to go back into the frustrating situation that you have, where you mightn't be getting validation or thanks even for disrupting things. It's not always welcome, but if you're doing that and getting validation for that somewhere else, it can actually be really, really useful as a personal thing to kind of keep people with that resilience. So I was really interested in what you had to say. It's definitely another path, but definitely with similar roots to the motivation that we had for founding Innovate Ireland. And I think, Owen, that's probably what you found in the beginning as well when we were setting out, right? I'd love to hear your thoughts on how that has helped with the personal, the personal reward that you get from being helpful and helping out, plus also then how that helps you as an innovation professional.
Isaiah?
Yeah. Look, yeah, very, very, very true, Alan. We once launched a network, this is many years ago. It was the South African Innovation Network with a small e, so short for SANE. And we said, if you're a member, you are insane. But anyhow, on a lighter note. And but subsequently, it grew, and I think because we grew, it grew rapidly, but I think the wrong people joined, and eventually it collapsed. And perhaps that's a conversation for another day as to what to watch out for. But your point around that, Alan, it's so important. I've been in the city of Tshwane for 5 years. I didn't think I'll last that long. It's very different. It's a municipality. When I got there on the first day, I told my team, I don't mind your work hours, just deliver. Make mistakes. If you make mistakes, blame me. And it was unusual for them. And we started to develop the culture. And when we had successes and won a few awards, the city took notice. But still, there's limited understanding. We still do not get the full support from the city. A lot of the work we do, we have to find funds outside. And I would like to hear your views as well, because once you've demonstrated the ROI and the value of innovation, you still struggle to get the support. And that's what makes it lonely when there's challenges. The city manager understands, but it's like, come innovate, we need a solution, but it doesn't work like that. There's a process, we build platforms. So indeed, it is a lonely space. And I think you should, perhaps one key lesson for myself that I've learned many years ago is that don't look to be credited for anything. You may start the initiative, and but it is to be successful, you have to let the appropriate leader, decision maker, believe and feel that it was their idea and it's their win, and you're just there on the side. And that's how we actually gain a lot of momentum. Yeah, and it's risky business. Perhaps this one thing, Owen, I've shared with you before. When I joined Eskom, we had, and at the time I was naive. I had these lovely models around innovation, business models. And then I realized, no, Exco doesn't care about it. No one really cares about it. They want to see the value and impact. And but I realized we're not moving fast enough. So I went home and I said to my wife, look, I'm now head of innovation. We need to move faster, but I have to take massive risk to take the organization forward. But I run the risk of being fired. She gave me a blessing to say, okay, go and do what you need to do. I then came back and I unleashed the team. I said, you go to meetings, do what you have to. But when I left Eskom, I was asked to stay. It had the opposite effect. So, but I guess it was more of me freeing my mind and taking more risk. But in some organizations, you may be fired. But yeah, so I fully agree with you, Alan.
So Judy didn't fire you, and then Eskom didn't fire you. That's two good results.
That's two. And then I'm still in the city, so yeah.
Alan,
Just by
any
the
comeback?
way, you know, Alan, I am in the city because I think wearing my Ubuntu hat, we have impact, but I see myself as an entrepreneur and as an innovation consultant. And when I joined the city, when they called me an official, I lost sleep. I couldn't see myself as an official. So, but we're having impact. So I want to go back into consulting. But yeah, let me leave it there.
I think that was a great answer, and I'm going to just let somebody else get on. Sorry, John, for cutting across you earlier. You've got a question queued up, but just to say, I think we should probably be expecting to see more of one another and one another's networks in future, because it sounds like a very good fit from the motivation point of view and from the purpose point of view that you have as well. So really happy to meet you on the call. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah,
Alan, we might have to invite Isaiah back. Just any excuse, I think. Sorry, John, we've kept you waiting. Go for it.
Oh, no, you're good, actually. In fact, I think the opposite. I think, actually, I might just gate crash the South African UBUNTU, actually, and get in that way and pull the information back on either way. It was interesting you used the word insane earlier on, because at times I think all of us kind of we could have asked ourselves the question, is this, are we going down the road of insanity? But what I'm curious to know actually is that, and you mentioned it on one of your earlier slides, is money actually has to come into play from a setting up the necessary structure or support mechanism to be able to help those companies come through. Do you mind actually sharing how did that come about, or where did you make progress within that space from a funding perspective or support?
Yes, thanks, John. Owen, my line, I think, was a bit unstable. Was the question around which companies and support? Sorry, I missed you a little bit.
apologies, actually, no, then maybe I mightn't. What I'm just curious to know actually is that like from when you were starting off and putting this in place, how did you go along actually and overcome the issue of funding and support to be able to put the structure you have in place at the moment to get it up and running and operational?
Look, I can give you a view in the city of Tshwane, but perhaps because I've been with a few organizations starting it out, and really the low-hanging fruits are so important, because I think what the CFOs or ExCos struggle with is to see, we like innovation, and I often say leaders romanticize with this word innovation, but if you ask them what are you doing without it, there's nothing. They like it, but they don't know what it will bring for them. And perhaps I'll give you one example at the IDC, our Industrial Development Corporation. I realized that we launched an idea challenge, and then people responded. One of the ideas received was from a lady Refillway, and it's really not an exciting idea. She was simply saying, in the IDC, we have a canteen, but the banks are far. Quite often, I don't have cash and I can't pay. Can't I use my employee card just to load money, and then I'm settled? So we got a cash loader, etc., and implemented the idea. This is what's interesting, John. On the day that the idea is launched, people came, loaded money, and they saw Refillway there. And for the first time, many said, so leadership took you serious with this idea. They actually implemented and they listened. When we monitored the idea portal, on that same day, IDC wasn't a big organization, around 500 people, but we had 80 new ideas. Of the 80, 10 ideas were similar around how the IDC should actually process funding, business funding. We called those 10 people in the room, and they all said, yeah, we've had this idea, but we didn't trust leadership. Now that we see you implementing things, they got together, the 10 of them, developed the idea. 3 months later, that online platform for the IDC to implement that idea was live, and it started to snowball. And it's tough getting that momentum going, but I've seen it playing out in public sector, NPOs, and private sector.
Yeah. It's basically giving people a voice and knowing that they're being heard.
Yes, yes, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant, John. I've decided to stick my hand up, or I might never get a word in edgeways. So, which is, I know, very rare for me. So, actually, I've got about 10 questions, Isaiah. But if you go back to your presentation, you talked about early on some of the events, the forums you were arranging were focused on real problems. But whose real problems? Which problems got consideration in that forum? Which forums are right for which problems? What's your take? What's your approach to sourcing the right problems? How do you make sure there's a focus on something where there's a connection between the problems that you choose and the values or the impacts that you might have? So what is your approach to squaring that circle in your career?
Yeah, that's a very, very important one, as you all know, because you don't want to end up solving the wrong problem. I'll firstly perhaps tell you at a community-based level with the Innovation Army, and it takes time because we see the lack of critical thinking, where, for instance, someone would say one of our biggest problems here is load shedding, for us, electricity shedding. And I would ask why, and they would say because of corruption in government. But that's not a problem. So I'm just raising this, that we have to dive in to really get to the problem until someone realizes, but I can make a difference here. Similarly, in the organization, when we craft this open innovation challenge, it's very difficult because it has to be specific enough, but open enough to receive new ideas from an innovation point of view. And I'm personally, I wouldn't call myself an expert in that, but there's a science in how you do that. But you have to go back to the community or the people organization that's really experiencing the problem and try to interpret it and go with, the normal tools, the whys, etc., to get to the root cause of the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant answer. I've got a follow-on question then, which is sometimes what you're talking about sounded like a ceremony and a reward. Sometimes it sounded like it was a competition, and sometimes it sounded like, or you used the phrase, a challenge, a funded challenge, or where you've picked the challenge before you invite people to to whatever it is, the program, the forum. So do you have any thoughts on the balance about where competitions work, where challenges work, where reward ceremonies work? Because you've got a lot of experience of all of those.
Yeah, and perhaps, and I haven't seen it, it may exist. I know Innovation 360 does it to some extent. The language of innovation, to have our common language so that we have the same understanding. And I sometimes still battle with it. Competition, I find in some areas it works well, but I prefer challenge because it speaks about addressing a challenge. When it becomes competitive, and when we had the Innovation Army, initially when we launched it, we noticed with community members, when it was a competition, some were saying, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to beat, and then we realized that it's not about that. There's actually no losers. Everybody wins going through the process. So, and we probably, for those kind of environments, prefer challenge, to say we're solving problems together. And with that, I like the word co-creation. Not everybody does, but we jointly create solutions to problems. So I know it's perhaps not a clear answer, but I'm also still grappling with that one, Owen. Yeah.
Well, here's a comment. Now, this is a jaundiced opinion from. I'm not really cynical, but I'm going to, sound like I'm cynical here. So Ireland has a reputation of not doing great planning. It has a reputation of not using joined-up thinking, because we're trying to get an instant result, and we're trying to satisfy, not satisfy. We're trying to satisfy lots of stakeholders, but we do that in a shallow way. And then, in my opinion, in Ireland, particularly with small-scale startup, Martina does quite a bit of that, or local authorities, we go for reward ceremonies and we go for competitions where where ideas that are not connected at all are competing with each other, or we go for rewarding effort. So we're granting people to do a training course, we're granting people to go to a place to do a thing, but we don't pay enough attention, in my opinion, in Ireland, public and private, to having a mission, which values are really important, and then picking challenges, picking your problems so you can add real value, real impact. It's easy for me to say these are opinions of where Ireland doesn't do as well as it might. And I know South Africa has less money per person, but you and I, we know each other. So it sounds to me like some of what you're doing hits the right nails on the head. So it's just a comparison from my strange corner of what I'm learning from listening, not just today, to the experience from South Africa and other places. I don't think we get the mission and the challenge focuses right. And I'm sort of, I'm misquoting, but that's coming straight out of my reading of Mariana Mazzucato at the moment. This one is the value of everything. That's not sure if there's a question in there, Isaiah, but how would you react to what I just said?
Look, I wouldn't say we always look. We have many challenges in terms of that as well. Finding that balance versus solving the correct problem or issue or challenge with the limited funding that we have. But I think because a lot of the people in our target, typically at grassroots level, they are so close to the problem that they experience almost on a daily basis. And from that point of view, it's easier to find the root cause of specific problems. And I think that helps. But if you move higher LSMs, it becomes more complex, because you would see movements dealing with all kinds of things, and you would have to ask, will that add value really? And I don't know. So I'm also not sure whether I fully align to what you say, but yeah, that's my sense around it.
Well, I was being provocative. I'm poking in, which I do occasionally. Captain Awkward is one of the roles that I take on, probably because it's natural to me. So,
but well, I know by now, yeah.
yeah. So, Eric, some of what Isaiah was saying sounded like design thinking to me, although I don't think Isaiah calls himself a design thinker. What do you think?
I don't have my special headphones anymore, so I have to manually unmute. Yeah, no, it does sound like human-centered design to me, and that's probably why it struck a chord when you started talking about it. For me, designing solution in communities by communities is by community member is kind of at the core of HCD. So it's getting solutioning and immersing yourself in where the problem lies. I think that there's no better place to be. So yes, no, I totally agree with that.
Okay, interesting.
So I think we're probably finished with the formals, which was a very informal hour from the first place. But Isaiah, we said we would do certain things. We've done all those things. I think that was really great talk. And the Ubuntu human-centered design, what's the difference between Ireland and South Africa? That for me was fascinating, and not just today. I will come back to this. The session has been recorded and will be made available. I wonder, Isaiah, would you be able to share that slide with the model?
Well, yeah, I'll share it. I'll send it to you. I'm thinking whether I should formally write it up. It's still work in progress, but I'll send it to you. Yeah, I don't mind. And yeah, thank you for the invitation. It's you know, Owen, my first language is Afrikaans, and Afrikaans, my R and it's very strong. So one of the struggles I had, my daughters, they're all obviously in English schools now attending that. So they had to assist me because it's island and island, as in Ireland and Ireland, almost sounds the same to me. So they had to take me through a process to say, Daddy, no, it's Ireland and Ireland. So you put me in a conundrum there. But anyhow, thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, these platforms, I wish we could exchange more, and because I've picked up quite a few things from yourselves that are certainly, for me, key takeaways. So thank you very much.
Well, Isaiah, we do this most Fridays at the same time, always using the same link. Join us anytime.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well said, John.
No, thank you.
And much deserved. So the only thing I'll say now is next week is back to a coffee stop. And as you know, with Innovate Ireland, we've got the new branding and the new association with Intertrade Ireland. So thank God we can actually have a higher level of activity. So we'll hopefully see you next week, and we'll have more news coming up. Okay, goodbye, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.